Welcome back, Table Network. In this episode, we talk with Tori Hope Petersen, an unexpected overcomer. Follow her story from 12 different foster homes to Miss Universe, and learn how she's using her voice now to amplify others. Welcome back to another Table Network podcast. On this episode, we have Tori Hope Petersen. Tori, former DCX speaker, and really the words to describe you are so random and beautiful. It's almost as if we threw a bunch of titles into a hat and then started dragging things out, right? Like foster kid, track star, Mrs. Universe, speaker, author. I want to start just by diving in your story a little bit and unpacking some of those titles. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I love speaking at DCX. You guys were such fun people to work with. And so it's great to be here with you guys. The story that I'm most commonly known for is that I grew up in the foster care system. After growing up, a majority of my life, I grew up with my biological mother. But unfortunately, she struggles with severe mental illness. And there was a lot of abuse in our home, which eventually led me and my sister, who is 9.5 years younger than me, to enter the foster care system. And I lived in 12 different homes throughout my entire journey through foster care. It was very challenging. I felt very unwanted and very unloved. And I questioned, just if there was something wrong with me all of the time. And then there was also labels, there were labels placed on me. When you're in the foster care system, you have a file that follows you around from home to home. And I had a file that just put labels on me. And then I had, there was a part of my community that was she's a bad kid. And I knew that they said that. And then there was a part of my community that was well, she's worth investing in, and she's worth loving. And for me, that was predominantly my church community. And they gave me opportunities to do advocacy at 16, 17 for a foster care nonprofit. And they gave me opportunities to share my testimony. And so they planted seeds in me for all that is today. And then I also had a track coach who was like a father figure to me. And he came into my life and was mentoring me. And between my junior and senior year, he was like, Tori, I think you can go onto the state track meet and I think you can win it. And I was like, this old man is crazy. No one ever said anything like that. And I was like, oh, we're just going to do what he says and see what happens. And if it doesn't happen, then we're just going to blame him because it was his crazy idea, not mine. And that year, he just coached me. I trained under him, and I became a 5-time state champion in track and field. And then my track coach also took me into his family and adopted me.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's such a cool and powerful story, for sure.
Yeah, when I look back and I see all that I'm doing now, it's just so encouraging, I think, to see that God was always there, planting seeds, putting the right people in the right place, for me to be where I am today and be doing what I am. It was always when you look back, it's that it was always apparent that this was the path and that God was paving the way and protecting me. But when I was in it, I was so blind, and there were times I was so discouraged. But I would say it was the day that I became a state champion that I knew, okay, my trauma is not going to define me, and my life is going to be different than the way I grew up.
Wow. Man, that's so good. My tendency is to try and master plan this, forward looking story, and it never goes as I plan. Right. But whenever I'm able to look back, somebody actually texted me last week and they're like, hey, Zach, you need to go write down your story. And so I'm literally starting right now, year 1, page 1, and just writing down and seeing how God was working all throughout my story. Yeah. And it's been really, really life-giving. One, to know that I have control over nothing, but he has control over everything. And it's a lot more beautiful story than I think I could, I know that I could write myself. So it's cool.
Yeah. One of the things that I say to parents who are struggling with their youth, who are in the foster care system or who are adopted and they're struggling in their trauma, I just tell them, like, give them time to be able to look back. Because when you're like a kid, it's so hard to see. Well, first off, you don't have like a ton of life to look back on, right? Like you're a kid, but also when you're a kid, it's just so hard to look back or look in even in the moment and see that things are working out for good when you're suffering or struggling or hurting. And so sometimes that's what we need, right? We just need time to like process it and write it out. I think that's what my book has helped me do so much of. And when I was growing up with my mom, like she always told me if I told anyone outside of the home what was happening, then everything would get worse. And so I like didn't tell anyone, but I would write down in my journal like what was happening. And then I went into the foster system, and I lived in a group home where we weren't able to like do much. I lived on a campus, so like we walked to our school. It was like 100 yards away, and then we just stayed on campus for like a lot of our lives. And so like there was nothing else to do, so I just journal. And that's like another thing. Like I look back and I see, okay, now a huge part of my job is writing content, writing books. And I'm like, oh, okay, that was like also another thing that was always there.
Yeah, nothing's wasted. If you could go back, talk to young Tori, like at that time, what advice would you give younger you?
Well, young Tori was very hurt. So young Tori was very mean. And I so regret like how hurtful I was to my peers. And if I could go back and say anything, it would just, and I know it's like so corny. It's the thing that we always hear, but like just to be kind, because you never know the battle that someone else is facing. And I just always thought that the battle I was facing was the hardest. And so I had the right to be mean, and I had the right to like say the harsh things that I said to people. I remember there was this time, there was a girl in my class, and she like had naturally brown hair, and she dyed it black with like blonde underneath. And then she came to school, and I went up to her and I was like, your hair is hideous. Like, I was just such a jerk. And I know it's like funny when I say it now, but it's like, I just feel so terrible that I said and did stuff like that. And I tore people down because I know now, because people have spoke so much life into me, and because people have spoke so much death into me, that like words literally are life or death. Like there is nothing in between. And there was just a time in my life where I was so hurt that I was so like mean, speaking death over anyone who was coming in my path. And so I would just encourage young Tori to be kind, and probably to like try and start understanding what healing was. But I mean, even I feel like I have, not that I'm like I've made it in my healing journey, but I do feel very fortunate. I feel like in my age to have experienced the amount of healing that I have in my life.
Yeah, you've done a lot of hard work to get there. I love that you've had people speaking life into you, and that's probably encouraged, obviously, those steps in healing. But I love that you get to offer that because you've been in the depths of hurt and pain, and yet you've done this really hard work to heal. And healing is just, I know for a guy who's about to turn 50 years old, when you shove things down, decade after decade, it's really, really hard to go back in there into this deep, dark closet and start unearthing things that I didn't count as trauma, especially as a kid in a home with no empathy. But now that I'm looking at these things, they were traumatic to a little kid. But I buried them so deep for so long that, man, healing is just hard. So I love that you've done a lot of hard work and now can offer that hope to people.
Yes, thank you. And I think that's like you said, like, what would you tell like the little girl Tori? Just, I wish that I could have started doing that much younger, because yeah, I've just seen the impact of telling my story, even that it's had on me. Like storytelling has been so healing because it allows me to like process, but it also it's allowed me to encourage people to step into their calling and to see themselves as God sees them, And I have been able to tell so many kids who've come from hard places and kids who come from foster care that they are worthy and they are loved. And there was a time when I would say that, like I would get on a stage and have thousands of people in an audience. And I would say, this is how God sees you. You know, you're so loved, you're so worthy. But I did not believe it about myself. And after like speaking it so much over people, I can now say like, I believe that about myself. Like if I can say it for them, then I should be able to say it for me. And I think for so long I thought like, oh, well, like, could that be seen as prideful? Is that seen as conceited? But like, if it's true for them, if God believes it about them, then God believes it about me.
I love that.
That's really powerful. I think a lot of the human condition is just really like an identity issue. You know, we place a lot of our identity on like those circumstances or those experiences that, you know, we've faced or struggled through, and then we place that as our identity, and then therefore it's really hard to believe anything else. But I love how you get to encourage other people that it doesn't matter what your story has been. It matters like who you choosing to be each day, and how that is so much more powerful than our past experiences. And obviously that plays into it. But our identity is just way more rooted in truth and in life than in the darkness and the deceit that the world tells us. And so I just love that message and that story that you get to share with people. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah, I really do believe that like healing begins and ends with identity. When we know who we are and what we're called to, that our past does not define us, that our pain was made for a purpose, like it just strips us of old identities and it brings those new ones to the surface. Like we can, when we actually, and that's why like I love my work. I love what I get to do, because I actually get to walk in my calling, and then it validates everything that God has said about me. And so it's like this tangible proof. And I think that identity is so powerful. And, you know, people kicked me out of their homes, right? Like over and over and over again. But when I learned that like a huge part of my identity is that God creates a place for me in a kingdom, and that like he has called me to so much more, then it's like, oh wow, like this is a part of me. Like I inherit like all that God says that I inherit. Like that's a part of me. And people can call me names. I can have all these false labels on me in my file. But like God calls me loved and worthy, and he calls me daughter. And there can be people who are like, oh, I don't want her to be my daughter, but God calls me daughter. And so identity really is like, it's so pertinent that we know who God says we are and who he says he is.
Well, and I love too how you mentioned like some people might view like if you understand who you are and like you claim that a lot of people might point fingers and be like, oh, that's really prideful, or like you're boasting in yourself. But I think you model it really well. And so I'd love to just kind of hear what it's like having a platform, right? Like you were Miss Universe, you do speaking engagements, you've written a book, like you have this platform where people are looking at you. And I truly believe you're not doing it for the fame or the glory of your name. But what is it like kind of having, you know, some spotlight on you, and how do you want to utilize that, not for pride, but for better glory?
Yeah, well, it's a great privilege and honor. It's just like, I mean, sometimes I feel like I don't even have the right words for it, because it really is such a privilege to be able to do this work. And I'll be honest, I mean, I think this is the best example I can give. Like, I think it's in a lot of pastors' stories, or like a lot of people who speak stories, where they'll be like, I never wanted to be a pastor, or I never wanted to preach, or I never wanted to speak, but this is where God placed me. And I'm like, really? You never wanted to do this? Because like, I wouldn't say, there's not too many things that I would say. Maybe I just can't relate to that, because there's not too many things I would say like I'd never do. I'm kind of like, I'll do anything. I love trying new things. But there's just this piece of me that like, this work is such a privilege, and it's fun, and it's hard. Like there are times it is really, really hard. And there have been times where I'm like, I think I'm going to give up today. Like this is getting weighty, but like overall, it's just a privilege and honor. So I'll start there. And then, you know, I think that there's this story and when I was in college, I was given this book. It's called In Jesus' Name by Henry Nouwen. And he starts the book talking about how he wrote lots of books. He was, this renowned speaker. And then, but he did also like missionary ministry work, like boots on the ground stuff. So I felt like I've always kind of been able to relate to that. I live in rural America. A lot of my cohorts live in big cities, and doing ministry and having this job in a rural area, the reality is it is just different. But he talks about how he went to go do ministry, or kind of like a mission, in a home where adults with special needs lived. And he lived among them, and he said, like, nobody knew his books, nobody knew he was a renowned speaker. And so what was most important was that he was a person of good character. And so that's just something that I want to live out well, because in the end, I can have a lot of books, I can be a renowned speaker, but if I pass away and people, undig all this stuff, and I know this name is like, we shouldn't even say this name out loud, but like Ravi Zacharias, let's just say it, renowned speaker, had all the books, but then we undig all this stuff when he passed, and that hurt so many people. It made people doubt humanity. It made people doubt God. And so it's just so like important to me that I'm responsible, I guess, with what God has given me.
Totally.
And that I am a person of consistent character.
Yeah, I
don't want to be known as a famous hypocrite.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I want to be known as someone that, like, walked out what I preached till the day that I died.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. We're just now kind of grappling with, parents, and my parents are in their 70s, and it's one of those things that as I get older, I'm like, man, I have so much value in what I'm doing. Like, I talk about identity. I think about my current situation, my current job, my current influence, and I think, I'm really proud of, in a good way, hopefully, like what I'm doing and the hard work I'm putting in. But what you just said is so important. It transcends everything else in life, that it's really about our significance, and that significance is in those character traits. We kind of, talk about these ideas of like soft skills or human skills. Well, again, pull the curtain back. Those are God's skills, and those things bind us together in incredible unity, in kindness and compassion, and these ideas of patience and loyalty, and all these things that we kind of look at as the side, like those things kind of come alongside who we are. But man, when everything else goes away, that's the only thing I'll be able to have on this earth that continues to give me significance, is that character, and being known for someone of character. I absolutely love that. So important.
Yeah. It's the thing that like you can always hold on to. Like if all of your talk recordings are deleted, if all of your books are burned, like if all of your work perishes, if you're an artist, no matter what, like if you lose your job, like you can always be a person of good character.
Yeah, I love that.
That's very good. This is a little off topic, but just thinking of the conversation of unity, and that's like the theme that we're going after this year, this fight for unity. I feel like your family, the structure that you have right now, the family that you've created and crafted is like a perfect story of unity. It's kind of a gathering of different people from different places. And I would love to kind of just hear what that's like to be building a family that isn't in the typical way. I mean, and you didn't grow up in the typical, two parents household family. But I'd love to kind of hear your take on what that looks like to create like a unified home with children from different parents, maybe.
Yeah. So I have a biological son. That's my firstborn. And then probably like he was a year and a half. And then we received a call. Someone told us that there was a young man sleeping in public bathrooms. He couldn't go into the foster care system, which had a lot to do with his immigration status. And so he came to live with us. And we adopted him about a year later. Now he's been adopted for 2 years into our family. And then before we adopted him, I birthed my second born daughter. So I have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 20-year-old. And then my biological sibling, who I was separated from in the foster care system, also lives with us. And so, yeah, we do definitely have a unique family. And I don't know, just like it's interesting to say the word united or unified, because I will say that right now, even I think it's easy to have good relationships with a 2 and 4-year-old, like, but I will say that we have really good relationships with our older ones who are with us. And I think that that is harder as someone who has struggled to have good relationships with my parents as a young adult. So I think, like, when I think about the teenagers, and I think about the word unified, the thing that comes after that is like just meeting them where they are. There are things that they do that like we wouldn't prefer, we wouldn't choose.
Yeah.
However, I think we just do our best to meet them where they are, and we would rather, something that we say is like, we would rather be in relationship with them than be right. So there are a lot of things that maybe we disagree on, but we're not gonna like have an argument about it. There's a lot of times where everyone in our family has pretty big opinions about lots of things. We all like, you know, people say that there's sweet families and spicy families. We are absolutely a spicy fam. Like there's no doubt about it. Even the toddlers are spicy. But a thing that like we will not die on the hill to be right. Like die on hills to be like Jesus. At least I would say me and my husband, like we die on hills to be like Jesus, to meet our older youth where they're at. And actually something that, and I would say like we really listen to what they say and we apologize. So my biological sibling lives with us, and I hope to always do this, but I ask her like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And something that she recently told me was that when I'll call her downstairs, like to spend time with her. And then she says she'll be talking to me, and she says, like, I'll be sitting on my phone. And that was like a dagger to my heart. And I honestly could have been like, you have no idea how much work I have. You have no idea how much like stuff I have to do. And like, I support our family. You know, I could have went on and on, but I told her, I said, you are right. And I'm really sorry. And I'm going to do better. And I really looked at it as a blessing, because I thought my 4-year-old and 2-year-old can't say that, but my teenager can. And my 4-year-old and 2-year-old probably feel that way, but they can't articulate it because they're foreign. And so there's a lot of different dynamics in our home that, you know, that we're probably doing plenty wrong. But I would say, you know, what we're doing right is that we really do listen. We don't die on the hill to like be right. And we say sorry. And then we try and actually fix what we say sorry for.
That's great advice.
Yeah. I love that. My wife and I went to a marriage counselor a few years back, and it reminded me of the acronym she taught us, Seth, that we're strong enough to hear. And so you were strong enough to hear. And I think that what binds you guys and what binds all of us, if we let it, is the fact that hurts are universal. We're all hurt. We all have hurts. We might think of our hurts as bigger than everyone else's, but like behavior is divisive, but hurts unify. It gives us something in common that we can show up for them in the way that you're showing up for your kids. And it's so much more powerful in that moment than being right. So I love that. Very, very, very cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, so I have a little guy, and he'll do the same thing. We'll be laying on the couch. He's like, no screens, Daddy. I'm like, all right, I get it. Like, I get it, kid. And I love what you're doing. You're really giving your kids a voice, right? Like, unity is rooted in relationship, and you're doing a good job of telling them that they're contributors in that relationship. And I just, that seems to be a common theme for you, really amplifying the voice of others, like giving others a voice, like encouraging or drawing out that voice. Can you talk a little bit about I mean, your story didn't start with getting out of foster care system, or didn't stop with getting out of foster care system or Miss Universe. Like, you're doing so much good work now. And so how are you amplifying the voices of others?
Yeah, like I said, I really believe in the power of storytelling. I believe that I have been able to see God's hand in my life through my story because I tell it. And I've been able to see there's the scripture, Genesis 50:20, that says, what you did to harm me, God is now using it for good, the saving of many lives. And I really think that we could probably all see that throughout our story if we had the opportunity to share our story and then listen to the response of people. And sometimes we share our story, but we don't always get the messages, or we don't always get the response. You know, I've started sharing my story probably when I was like 16. And I remember I shared my testimony for the first time at a church, like in a very formal way, at the age of 18. And then it was 3 years later, I heard from a mom. I didn't, you just don't even know what's going to happen. This is the cool thing. I heard from a mom 3 years later, messaged me when I was in college, and said, we adopted our dog. We started fostering right after we heard your story, because we heard your story, and we're adopting our daughter today. And it was just like, okay, that's like just Genesis 50:20 written all over it. And I think if everyone just had the opportunity to share their story and hear feedback of the results, what people put in action because they heard the story, we would all see Genesis 50:20 over our lives. So a huge part of my work now is amplifying the voices of survivors, people who've grown up in foster care, human trafficking survivors. There's, the scripture that talks about being a voice for the voiceless, speaking up for those that can't speak up for themselves. But I really like to think that we have to stay true to that, like really actually think like people who really can't speak up for themselves. Those are the people we speak up for. But the people who can speak up for themselves, we need to give them opportunities to do so. The people that do have a voice, we shouldn't be deeming those people as voiceless and then speaking up for them and acting as heroes. I think that does more damage than good, because no one really wants an earthly hero. We all want a heavenly hero, but no one wants an earthly hero. No one wants you to save them. And if you look at what my track coach did, he never tried to make himself the center of my story. He always put me at the center and said I was the hero, and then pointed me in his character and in his words towards the one true hero. And so in my work, I host retreats and I host programs for survivors of all kinds of backgrounds. I'm going through the process of storytelling and healing, forgiveness of our abusers, because, when we share from a place of healing, we're going to heal others. But when we share from a place of hurting, we're going to hurt others. And so we just dig real deep into all of that stuff with other survivors who have come before them, who are doing the work, who have either, published a book, who are speaking internationally. And then we also have an on-staff therapist who helps them process through the journey, through the weekends of storytelling, and just really hone in on healing and the power of stories.
That's awesome.
So good.
I love it.
Dang.
Thank you.
Wow. Should we wrap with a lightning round of questions?
We can.
I love lightning rounds.
All right, good. We'll see how lightning this is. Last time I asked the first question and then forgot all the rest.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we go. Okay, to start off, if you could have a superpower or be a superhero, what would it be?
I basically am the Christian Domino, because Domino's superpower is luck and my superpower is God's favor.
Come on now.
I love that.
That's good.
What was your track sport?
I ran the 100, 200, 4x1 and 4x2. And then in college, I got bumped up to the 400 and 4x4.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So I ran all of those races one time because my track coach was trying to figure out if I would be good at any of them. And I was not. But I ran all of them once in high school.
Did you ever drop the baton, Tori?
So this is a crazy thing. I talked about this in my book, but I false started on my first individual race, and then my second race, I didn't drop the baton, but I handed off the baton in the wrong lane. And then I ended up being a 4-time state champion. I'm like, that redeems all things.
Yes.
Don't quit.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's similar to your story, right, Kenzie?
Yeah, I dropped the baton
just-
and never ran again.
Oh.
Quit too early. Yeah.
It was one of my best friends too. She was pretty upset with me, but
Hey, you're
track
still
was not
friends.
my thing. That is not my calling on the earth, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
I tried.
Yeah.
Let's see. What other question?
If you could give a piece of advice to parents, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. I should not be
softball.
giving any parents advice. I'm still trying to figure this thing out. But oh my gosh, I have no idea. I don't know. Something that I'm just gonna say something that I hear that I think reminds me of, like, our kids just want us to be present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our kids want us to be present. Like, they just want us to be there, and it doesn't always have to be perfect. We don't always have to have like these put together activities or, great conversations, but like, they just want us to be there.
I love that. What about breakfasts of champions? Like, what's your go-to breakfast?
Oh no. See, this is like, I'm like probably a not very healthy person. I don't really eat breakfast.
Well, that's what I'm going to do from now on.
And if I do eat breakfast, like, I'm like leftovers. Like, give me the leftover Thai, the leftover pizza, like
Okay.
whatever is left over. I'm a big leftovers girl.
Okay.
Just straight into it the next day. I love it.
Okay.
cool with that.
What do you do?
Yeah.
You seem like a very busy person. You got a lot going on. What do you do to find rest? Like, what is actually restful for you?
I think this is something that I'm still like trying to navigate and figure out. But because I feel like I should, like, the thing that I find restful right now is like listening to podcasts, reading, or like listening to audiobooks,
Mm-hmm.
which I actually do a lot when I'm driving. But I don't know if that would be like defined as your rest.
No,
I
that's
don't know
good.
if I'm actually like rested after that. The rest thing is something I'm still trying to figure out. But actually, like, and I know I don't really count this as rest, but I do sleep a lot. Like, I get 9 to 10 hours like every single night.
Oh, that is amazing.
Just like Kenzie.
That's
Sleep is like a very big deal to me.
wow. I feel so connected to you right now. I get made fun of a lot for how much I love to sleep, and I'm just a sleepy. Like, I need it.
But to be fair, we're not making fun of you for the amount of sleep. It's the fact that you do get all that sleep and then you yawn all day. Yeah.
That's rough.
Well, I could use more, I guess, is what it is.
All right,
Yeah, I
last-
have like no shame in the fact my husband takes mornings with the kids and I sleep. But it's because, like, so one of the things that I do is I usually work during my children's nap times. And then I'm always like, my sister called me out, like, I'm always doing some kind of work. But then, like, my most of my work, heavy work, is like when my kids nap and then when my kids go to bed. And so I do stay up pretty late, but
So
I gotta get my sleep.
you're a night owl over a morning person.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel that. Trying to embrace that nowadays. Okay, so
Just embrace it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
yeah,
No right or wrong
different.
way.
Yeah.
Some of us aren't night or morning owls.
I'm a midday
Oh,
person.
midday. Yeah.
I peak at 12 to 1.
No, 10 a.m. to 11:30.
When I'm eating lunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when I'm
Yes.
most alive.
Favorite time of day.
So podcasts, audiobooks, music, like, what is something that's inspiring you right now?
Okay. So I just had the opportunity to lead a program where I took 12 former and current foster youth to Mexico to build a home for a family that did not have a home. And so it was just, I mean, I'm just still like living off that high.
Yeah,
that's
that's
what's
awesome.
inspiring me right now. It's a bunch of people who have struggled to have a home at some point, and they built a home for someone else. Like, they're breaking generational curses for themselves, and then they're going to go
Yeah.
and break generational curses for other people.
That's
And I'm
really
just
cool.
like, whoa. Like,
That
I'm still
is
just
amazing.
like, whoa, at that whole thing.
That's amazing.
Love
That's
that.
awesome. Well, what a note to end on. You're doing so much good work. How can our community connect to what you're doing? You've got a book called Fostered, your website, ToriHopePetersen.com.
Yes. I probably am most active on social media, on Instagram. I'm like trying to learn this whole TikTok thing, but I'm the oldest of Gen Zs. And so I really sometimes function more like a millennial, and TikTok still a struggle. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. Tori Hope Petersen is my handle. ToriHopePetersen.com is my URL. And Petersen is SEN, not SON.
Yeah,
Nice.
Instagram is where I found you to be a speaker for DCX. So it's a great platform for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much for being on. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you.
Until next
Thanks a
time.
lot.
All right. Bye.
Hey, Table Network. Thanks for following another episode. Be sure to connect with everything that we're doing at dcxcommunity.com and follow Tori Hope Petersen and her journey at torihopepetersen.com.